everybody. I'm Candid Frankie's David Morisuti with Sportsnet. And my goodness, welcome to CFL Football Talk. The NFL's, all I'm going to say about the NFL is it's on the way. And David's got both eyes locked on when he's not thinking CFL on the Dallas Cowboys. Interesting situations going there. Real quick, just because we'll give a passive nod to the NFL. Big news in what would be the big news? Let me ask. What's the big news with the Cowboys?
Big news for the Cowboys. Well, they don't want to pay their best player. That's the big news. You want the money? We don't want to pay you. But you're like the richest team in all North America. It doesn't matter. We don't want to pay you.
It's just crazy. It's crazy. But anyway, okay, enough about the NFL. Let's get to the Canadian Football League. And the big news of the week and actually probably of next season, not just this week, but next season as well. The Toronto Argonauts have announced, I suppose, in tandem with the Canadian Football League, but it was the Argonauts that announced it, that their team will be going on the road to play 3 home games. And the 3 teams are Hamilton, Winnipeg, and Saskatchewan. 3 of the best locations for the Argos to play on the road.
Yeah, I'm not surprised, but I wasn't expecting it to be like that.
That's not the part that surprised me. The announcement said part of the reason why they're going to miss 3 games is because they need time to retrofit back the field to Canadian Football League standards, which would be the end zones, basically, right?
Probably the north end zone,
right?
One of it, part of it.
So that's, and then the announcement also gave a tip of the hat to the fact that Argo fans are going to benefit from this experience in the long run. Now, in the short run, they lose 3 home games. In the long run, the BMO Field is going to have various improvements that aren't going to be changed back.
Well, that's always been the big thing for me is that, as much as this is a pain for next season, you have to look at the long-term picture. And look, I had constantly people saying, well, MLS even keep the Argos around, all this and that. But with hearing them talk about they're doing things that'll benefit even the Argos moving forward, it should get people thinking, maybe it's not the worst thing just to have, the upgrades that are going to be happening. You have a bit of you take a bit of a short term. The short term pain. It's not even, I don't even know if it's pain. It's just the inconvenience, right, of what's going to happen. I get it. It's not ideal, but then again, I had heard that they would have had to have played a good majority of games outside, not in Toronto, right?
It's not as bad as some suggested it may be.
Right now, you and I both cover this team. I don't know how feasible it's going to be for either one of us to go and cover a game in Saskatchewan or Winnipeg. But at least we get one game in Hamilton that at least,
it's accessible.
Yeah, it's accessible there. But yeah, I do think I do think that Argos fans have a reason to be not happy about the situation, but understanding that it's not the worst case scenario that's being thrown at them. Let's just say.
Well, if you're a long-term Argo fan and if you've been around the team for 10 years, you went through this already once before.
Yep.
Basically a replay of what happened when the changes were being made to BMO for the same reason. There was no place for them to play. So so they went on the road. And but it was different then because to cover the Argos on the road to play Winnipeg, we went to Hamilton.
And remember when when Hamilton didn't have a stadium, they did not play those games in Toronto. They
Enemy
played those games
territory.
in Guelph.
They didn't play in enemy territory.
No, they played a season in Guelph. Like I heard that was more abysmal than what obviously is going to happen with Toronto this year.
Yeah, well, the whole thing is the game is going to be played. And it's not ironic. It's actually the same. We're having the same conversation, David.
Mm-hmm.
It's about amenities and it's about the game day experience. Going to a real CFL stadium as opposed to a college team stadium that isn't changed over to accommodate the CFL like Montreal is. It's two different. It's two different things. Even though they both are university stadiums, the one in Montreal has been retrofitted to fit the Canadian Football League and be more of a professional experience and a better game day experience. Whereas when Hamilton went to Guelph, they were making do with what they could. Right. That was. But so the same feeling now it's the same reason again. Not only that the Argos are on the road because of what's going on at BMO, it's also they want to play in a big league stadium per se. I know people are going to push back on me using that term, but I don't think there's any better stadiums to go to. Hamilton is the least of the three. Winnipeg and Saskatchewan are big league stadiums. I'm not afraid to call them that. They're big league stadiums. So is Hamilton Stadium to a degree.
Yeah, I get it. But I also get it. Like Argos fans probably would have preferred at this rate if they knew if you had to opt for them the option A, which is what they're doing right now, or can we find a way to get all the games in Hamilton? I'm sure many of them would just rather just bite the bullet and go watch all the games in Hamilton. But here's the thing: you think Hamilton's going to be, use your stadium for as many games as you guys want? Doesn't work that way.
Well, Hamilton now has a soccer team that plays there a lot. A lot of games there.
There's concerts there too.
There's a schedule that's made up, and they were probably because they were playing Hamilton, they made room for it. They said, "Well, when can we play the Hamilton game?" So there'll be probably some pre-discussion on ensuring that they could play the Hamilton game at home, even though it's a home game, right? So that was an accommodation that was strictly, good for Hamilton. The other ones are more conciliatory. The game in Saskatchewan and Winnipeg, simply because Argo fans have nowhere else to go. That unless you're willing to get a hotel and fly, it's $1,000 to fly back and forth to Saskatchewan. Winnipeg's a bit less. The hotel, goodness knows how much that is. One hotel stay, or you take a night eye, you go to see the game and get a red eye. I don't know. It adds. The one game will be more costly to Argo fans. The reason I'm going to defend the Argo fans being upset.
Yeah,
going on the road for that one game costs more than the season tickets probably that they're buying.
Yeah, no, yeah.
I throw in parking too, and that's expensive.
No, I don't disagree with that. I understand why they're upset. I truly do. I just for me, my thinking is, okay, what would you like the other situation to be?
Okay, here's what I'm gonna say, and I'm gonna be honest here, and I'm gonna be very critical of Metro Toronto. Okay, the Greater Toronto area. For the size of this area that we have, it's like some 10 million people, right? For the size that we have, there is no secondary location to do anything other than there is a place that's maybe a candidate to do temporary sporting events, and that would be Downsview Park, Downsview Airport. They're doing 50,000 people concerts there. They've done a couple, and they'll be doing more. I'm just wondering, why isn't there a B option? I'm sure if you go to any other big city, that there's somewhere else that they can put 10, 12,000 people. Whereas in Toronto, that's not possible. Our University of Toronto has a stadium they can put 400 people on. I mean,
I think, Frank, that's more so the problem
yeah,
is it's not that they don't have, like, they couldn't go to Downsy Park. The fact is, you got two major universities, two with football programs that have stadiums that are nowhere close to being even good enough to host a CFL game. And that to me is probably, it shows where the lack of where things, I think football kind of stands in this city. If the Leafs were ever told you can't play at Scotiabank Arena for some reason, there are other places the Leafs could go and play. Right? First, obviously, they could go to the Coca-Cola Coliseum. Obviously, not the ideal first choice. They can go to Hamilton if they need to. Like, it, that's kind of the issue in all of itself is uh, they don't have, like, you can't just say here's a new stadium you can go to use. Like,
right.
it's not feasible in today's day and age. I look at, right now in Tampa Bay, the Rays. Their stadium can't use the stadium because of the hurricane, right, that they had there, and then the stadium is not usable. So what are they? Where are they? They are in the New York I think it's the Yankees minor league ballpark. Look at the Oakland. Look at the, well, now it used to be the Oakland Athletics. Look at the Athletics. They're in Sacramento in a minor league stadium there.
Right. Till they can move.
There's just sometimes you just have to take and I understand people like, but this is for the World Cup. This is not, again, if let's say they wanted to make some changes to BMO Field, let's say they wanted to do renovations. Sometimes you have to take a bit of a loss.
Well,
And it's not just, now let's not forget, it's not just the Argos that are being displaced. It's also Toronto FC that gets displaced too. There's probably a TFC game in there. I don't know what the TFC situation will be.
Soccer stadium, so it's being
changed. So maybe there's a TFC game that's being done, and they can't change the stadium back until there could be that. I'm not entirely sure. I have to reach out to somebody over at MLSC to get the full. Why is it that Toronto is missing out on games even when the World Cup is done? Right? What's the retrofitting that needs to be done? Again, I just got the information. We just got the information literally.
We can assume
before we went on the air. This is not something I had, a day to get ready for. Let's just say,
as big a city as Toronto is, as big a city as it is, this is more of a statement about Toronto and the community that is Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
That is not pro sports. This community is not pro sports. How can I prove that? Very simply. There's never been an Olympics held here. There's been one in Calgary and there's been one in Montreal, but there's never been one.
And in Whistler.
Vancouver. You're right. So it's been the other three, I guess we'll say three biggest cities have had the Olympics and Toronto hasn't. I mention this because the only reason Hamilton has a football stadium of the value that they have is because they built that stadium for the Commonwealth Games. They needed a stadium and they decided to, okay, we'll do a Commonwealth stadium. They used the budget that was the Commonwealth stadium to help them build that stadium. The reason I mentioned Toronto's never had the Olympics, this would not be an issue if Toronto ever had the Olympics, because there would be venues created under the budget of the Olympics, and with the business that the Olympics would create would help offset the cost. I know the Olympics in people's minds are very expensive. I'm not here to argue that point. But what I am saying is there is an opportunity when the Olympics comes to a town, a city, where there's sports infrastructure that's built that would otherwise not be built. Like the reason the Canadian cycling team does their thing in Montreal is because they had the Olympics and they had the velodrome there. And, Calgary did the Winter Olympics, so they didn't have that. So they have bobsled. Same thing with BC. They have venues now that they can help their competitors get ready for the Olympics. Toronto has almost zilch. I don't even know what they have. Do they even have a swimming pool that they can use for, to promote the athletes that are in the swim events? I know they have something that's passable, but I just don't know how good it is. My point being that Toronto is not sports friendly. So the Argonauts, who are on a shoestring because of the situation, they don't have another opportunity. So they have to do stuff like this, not just because of the Argos, not just because of the Canadian Football League, but because Toronto is not as sports friendly as the other communities in Canada. It's as simple as that. Bread, not circuses. That's the phrase that always rings in my head when stuff like this happens. Am I against the idea that bread, not circuses? No, I'm apolitical. That's not my issue. But I have to call balls and strikes. And the balls and strikes are, because Toronto is not sports friendly, these kind of things are going to happen. And we've never had an Olympics, which is, I'm not going to say shameful. It's just odd. It's an oddity, like when you consider the other three cities in Canada that have had it. And this is basically something that the World Cup, for example, proves the point I've just made. Would these renovations be done at BMO that will be advantageous, that you've mentioned, and I agree totally, that this is a good thing for BMO Field, not just the Argos, but TFC and anything else that goes on there? Is this a good thing? Yes, it is. And the only reason it's happening, the World Cup is coming to Canada.
Yeah. And that's like the biggest sporting event, right, to ever come to Toronto. Let's be honest here, right? We haven't had an event like this in Toronto. Right? MLB All-Star Game maybe comes like we've never had a global event of this scale.
No.
In Toronto. Like the Pan Am games when they were here, they had a bit of prestige to it, but it wasn't.
But it was shared with Hamilton. It's
shared with Hamilton, and it wasn't as big as we had expected. Right now, here's the thing that's interesting, because I'm trying to find this out. There was an announcement made a few years ago when the World Cup was happening that there would be a new stadium built on the land that is Woodbine Racetrack. We talk about a secondary location for a lot of these things. Woodbine Racetrack has a lot of land, and they put in a lot of. They actually designated a lot of land for a new soccer stadium that would think for 8,000 people. It was meant to see as a training center / yeah, like there's just a lot of and I haven't heard anything really about the stadium, but it's like they were willing to make the investment in a stadium like that, but we haven't ever really looked at making an investment into a football stadium, and it shows where there just has never been a desire and investment to be made. When people talked about, I think when the Argos were looking at where they would go after the Rogers Center lease, I said BMO Field would be one, because it was meant to be somewhat open for CFL football. I said Downview Park is another option. I said, but getting out to Downview Park is a disaster. And I said, well, why not Woodbine? There's a lot of land over at Woodbine, and I understand that the casino and the horse racing gets a, but I'm like, there's a lot of land there. If you can make a transit hub over there, that would be a perfect location for another stadium. But the thing is a stadium like that won't work if it's only used 8 times, right? 9 times a year. You need other things to make it worth it. But then it was like, well, we already got BMO Field, so why are we building another stadium for the Argos? It just, ladies and gentlemen, it has to make sense financially, because unfortunately, it's not like Toronto, the Argos, can come out and say, well, we're going to throw in, and the city of Toronto ain't going to be throwing money in either. Let's also put that in it.
They're the reason why we haven't had any Olympics. Council there is bread, no circuses. That's
look at the fact that Winnipeg and Regina both have new stadiums because government decided with the universities, right, that we want a stadium.
And the game. Winnipeg and Saskatchewan are big football provinces. Let's also throw that in there as well, because to your point, you were saying what I wanted to say was the interest isn't high enough in football in Ontario for Ontario to want to push something. It's easy to say, well, nobody really cares about football here, and anyone who says that, cannot be debated. We don't look like we care about football here. The Toronto Argonauts had what, 13,000 people at the game, the last game they had. I know they're having a tough year, but it's not just tough years that don't draw basically draw a lot of fans that look like empty seats.
Yeah. I think where people, and I'm sure we want to get to the games eventually, but we rely on a lot of the private sectors for a lot of the sporting things in this city. The Leafs, the Raptors, the Blue Jays, even the Argos to a degree. There's
but they
never
have
really
a partner in government, David. BMO doesn't happen without the partner in government.
And there is to an extent, but it's the government doesn't have as much of a push or say as other cities in this country, let's just say.
Why did the Sky Dome get built? Because the premier of this province, I think it was Davis, went to a Blue Jay game, an Argo game, a Grey Cup they had at Exhibition Stadium, and he said, "That's it. We're a big city. What the heck?" So that's when the Sky Dome got built. It was built for the Argos. It wasn't built for the Blue Jays. The original idea was to find a place for the Argos to play. So basically, and the Blue Jays also benefited as well, obviously. So it's about a partnership with government. It's the only way in sports that new stadiums are built, unless you're the NFL. They're the only ones that, they don't play many more games than the CFL, but they do fine creating $2 billion stadiums, David. So the theory, as far as, you got to play a lot of games, that doesn't hold water completely. There's also the fact that, it's a big business, right? And the CFL in Toronto is not a big business. No. They have a big business running it. They have a great stadium. Hey, listen, BMO Field is a great stadium, and the improvements that they're making is making it a better stadium. It's still, it's a pro place, and it'll be even better now with the World Cup coming.
It will be, and I think it's just to show that Toronto can in fact host it. Although with the way that council's been talking about it, I don't know.
Well, hey, there's now, I guess, just to get past this so we can get to the games, like you said, there is now a lot of talk going on because Donald Trump is making it impossible for certain countries to come to America to actually play the games. There's talk now that some games might have to be played in Canada because of the issues that could happen if people, countries, players come to America. There's some deep concern with their safety. The last time something like this happened where people were unwelcome for a big event was the Olympics when Hitler was the boss, and people were afraid to go to Germany for obvious reasons. And Jewish athletes were told, "Don't come. You're not welcome." So this is one of the things that on a much smaller scale is going on, which could cause more games to be held at BMO Field.
Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly. But again, I can understand where fans are upset. I expected the Argos to lose home games. I expected that this event was going to displace this team. I expected it. What I didn't expect was Regina and Winnipeg to be the other two. Right? I didn't expect it, and I think that we're right now. But I think the big thing is people are upset with ownership. That's what I'm seeing right now. And frankly, look, if you're going to, I'm going to put this will be my final thought on this. I'm going to put this bluntly. If you think that MLSE was going to put priority on the Argos and TFC because there's two teams that are involved in all this over a World Cup. I'm sorry, but that's naive thinking. And now people are like, well, why not just do it at Varsity Stadium? Goes
There's
back
nothing.
to what we've been saying. People say, oh, just go to Varsity Stadium in Toronto. The capacity of Varsity Stadium, I'm just going to double check this. The
It's
capacity of Varsity Stadium for football is 5,000. Now, could they, with temporary seating, make it more? I think at one point they've hosted big events, but we're talking, God, whoa.
well, since they got rid of the stands on the other side, because land is important there, and they built buildings there. Yeah, it's not possible.
Yeah.
5,000
At one point, they had 27,000 for a CFL game at Varsity Stadium. That was in the 50s.
back in the day.
You're then going to have to make a decision on which fans can go to those games. And I think, or even if you had 10,000, yeah, the Argos aren't exactly selling out, but it runs to that issue of, oh, why didn't they think of a better, like, couldn't go to a bigger stadium? Like,
There's nothing.
I think MLSC and I think they all decided, you know what, nobody's going to be completely happy with this, so we just have to take just take it on the chin for one season.
It's much easier, and they'll probably. Well, we'll see. This is a terrible thing to say, but they'll probably have their highest home game attendance is probably going to be those 3 games. Mm-hmm. And they will be because the road team's going to be the home team. So it's just an extra game for the fans there. I don't know if they're working it into their season ticket package, but one thing's for sure. They've got a place to play. It is what it is. And I think we beat this dead horse to death. You can't kill it anymore. It's dead. Okay, let's move on to the next thing. Hopefully, people will appreciate the first game back after BMO is fixed and retrofitted. People really enjoy the changes. That to me is what we should key on and concentrate on. The rest is unfortunately stuff that you can't do. It's spilt milk. Speaking of spilt milk, Cameron Dukes' season this year had a really terrible start. He was released by the Toronto Argonauts after the year before being their starting quarterback. MBT last week, it appears he was hurt. And because of his 6-game absence from the lineup, the Montreal Alouettes needed another quarterback. And they looked around and said, oh, there's this guy, Cameron Dukes. He started for the Argos last year. And it seems former Argo quarterbacks are doing pretty well in the Canadian Football League. Why don't we bring him along?
Yeah, I was wondering myself, what was Cameron Dukes up to? Right? Would we see him back from the CFL? Would a team take a chance on him? And then I saw that he was going with Montreal. I'm like, interesting. And I saw the 6th game for McLeod at the Thompson. I'm like, very interesting, especially considering the comments made after the game against Edmonton, where Jason Moss pretty much called out McLeod and saying it's not good enough. Like, that was not good enough. And I'm just like, that sounds like a coach who's kind of done with the quarterback. And then you see the 6th game, and I'm just like, is that like a legitimate? I'm sure there's legitimacy to the injury, but or do they say, you know what, we need to go with a different option. So here, we're going to put you on the 6th game because frankly, I don't think Alouettes fans are upset at the idea of I hate to say this, but I don't think Alouettes fans are upset that McLeod Bethel Thompson's now out of the picture, considering how that game against Edmonton went.
Well, they're very concerned, and they should be, because they want to finish first. And Hamilton's putting up some really good games. And look, they're in there. They're in the hunt to stay in first, to be in first, to get in, and to have that absence in the Eastern Conference semifinal. So, Montreal's in it to win it. and they're not an organization that just sits on their hands. We've seen them under this new administration, this new coach and GM, that they'll make changes that they have to make. They'll add when they feel they need to add, and they're very good, and they've been very good, much like the Argos have been until this year, have been a team that keeps producing a winner, right? And one that has a shot at the Grey Cup. And having a shot at the Grey Cup is why MBT is not in the lineup and why they want to have a look at somebody else.
Yeah, and look, they do not want this season to get away from them. They don't want, because we know that Davis Alexander he will eventually come back, but will he be coming back after the 6 games too? Right? Like he's gonna take the 6 games, and we'll see what happens. But if you're Toronto and you're Ottawa right now, I mean Ottawa a little differently because they at least are a little closer and in a sense closer. But if you're Toronto or Ottawa right now, don't you smell a little blood in the water?
Yeah, don't you smell an opportunity you're not taking if you're the Argos?
I wholeheartedly agree. Even Ottawa to a degree too. You get that big win last week, and what do you do against Winnipeg? This Ottawa team could be 4. They could be 4-6.
They were infected by the Argos disease. Don't give us a big lead, because that's a terrible thing.
Well, Winnipeg was just like, yeah, we'll decide to come back in the second half against a Winnipeg team that had their struggles, but it's still Winnipeg. They still have guys that are going to make plays.
Absolutely.
And Winnipeg in the second half against Ottawa is saying, here's the game. You want it? You want it? You want it? No. Okay, we'll take it. We'll keep it.
Look what Pimpleton did. You see that? Did you see
Like
that minute left in the game? A minute left in the game.
But then you know what happened, Frank? After that, I said, "Oh, but there's still time. There's still time for." And then Collaros throws that interception. I'm like,
"Oh my god!
Oh, Ottawa, you have a chance to do something right now."
This is something that Collaros is going to, but hasn't had success in recent history enough to, I don't know, to want to do that. You know what I mean? It happened in the Grey Cup too. The Grey Cup game changed the same way the Ottawa game changed. The exact same thing, except for the finger injury. There wasn't one this time. And he went for it all again sooner than he needed to, only because I think Winnipeg wanted to surprise the opposition. Well, the only surprise was there was an interception, and Ottawa took advantage of that. But guess what? Winnipeg came through. Their kicker came through. It was an extension of the games last week where there really wasn't, in my opinion, there really wasn't a team that was going to win that game, except for Ottawa at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't stand up, which is a reflection of the previous week. And now, that saying that the Canadian Football League, we all know the saying, no lead is safe.
Yeah.
This week, the last week in the first game of this week, no lead is safe. Yes, it's true.
No, it is. In the CFL, you can't like Winnipeg had a 17-0 lead against Calgary. They lost that game. Toronto had a 22-1 lead against Ottawa. They lost that game. I think too often teams that bring up these. Frank, you said it last week, and I thought, and I'm just like, really? I don't know. I think there's a chance that they still win this game, but no. I just think that it speaks to, I think, the level of defenses in this league, that there are only certain teams that are clearly capable of holding down a lead. I can only really talk to one team right now that I would trust with a big lead, and that's Saskatchewan. All the other teams have vulnerabilities, in my opinion, to hold a lead. Whether it's their defense, whether it's their offense being able to sustain what they're doing for 4 quarters. it's really even like maybe Hamilton. I'll give them a little credit because their offense has shown that they can score points and things like that. But I don't know if they defensively they're good enough. But that's what I would say.
Absolutely, no argument, and it is something that that can't you can't argue it. But the Canadian Football League, no lead is safe. The offense, even though it is counterintuitive though when you think of a league that only has 3 downs against a league that has 4 downs, and big point leads aren't safe. Well, it's because there's only 3 downs in the Canadian Football League because every offense gets more chances to be effective and to score. And because it's so easy for offenses to end up back on the field, defenses look a little less, effective, right? And the ones that are make a big difference. And I think what you're talking about when you talk about Saskatchewan, where they sit is because their defense has done a great job, as has Hamilton, and as has Winnipeg's at times, right? So, if you have a really good defense in the Canadian Football League, you're going to give your offense a chance to work. And that's what we saw in this game last night. And then it ended up down to a late field goal, basically almost a walk-off, right?
Yeah, right. I'm just not as high on Hamilton because of their defense. I just think their defense has allowed too many points when their offense has scored a lot of points. Their defense hasn't stood the task. I mean, if you want to go through the game last week against BC, that was an exciting second half. That third quarter, oh my goodness. But also just Hamilton had a chance. Just stop BC, the James Butler catch in the end zone. Like BC got revenge from the week before because I think even BC deserved to win that game. To me, I don't. I think Hamilton will win the East. Will be first in the East. They should win the East. They should be going to the Grey Cup. But if you're telling me, and we're going to see a big test this week against Saskatchewan, but if you're telling me that defense is worthy of being a championship defense, now I get it. It takes time. I've seen championship defenses. Hamilton's had better defenses than this. That defense does not scare me right now. If I'm a CFL team, okay, yeah, as long as we can find a way to put up more points.
Absolutely. Well, so that's this week's game. Last week's we've given passive explanation of how the games went last week. Specifically, very quickly, I guess, with the Argo game, you talked about the lead. You talked about them giving it up. We're talking about a team whose coach doubts that there are players in the locker room who give an impression in the locker room, but somehow when they go out in the field, they can't deliver. There's a lack of delivery by too many players in his mind that should show what they're talking about, like walk the talk. And there are too many Argo players that are not walking the talk. And the talk that they're not walking is their own talk. So the coach has lifted that. He's basically saying, hey, put up or shut up. And now there's been a couple of changes made. At fullback, running back, and an additional DB that was brought in. We'll see. And we'll see how many guys from the practice roster and how many changes that are made. But one thing's for sure, no matter how negative Ryan Dinwiddie is about his team, David, he normally does not make that many changes. He's pretty consistent with his lineup. Even when he shows he's talked about the offensive line that hasn't been effective. Didn't change much there. He's talked last week about players who are not putting up. And now we're seeing some minor changes. I won't call it like they got rid of one of the running backs. But I think that's more of a function of they want to have somebody else to look at. And I believe I'll repeat what I said last week and the week before is, if a running back can play well in Canada, a kick returner, if he can play well in Canada, pretty quick. It's not something that I don't believe in Well, it takes a few weeks. No, there's a talent, there's an ability that transcends either game, and it just fits what a player has to offer. Like Pimpleton, that run back along the out of bounds line. I mean, come on. That's not just Winnipeg failing.
Yeah, no, I I think in the Argos case, the issue this season has been players. It has not been coaching because it's pretty much the same coaching staff, right? Yeah, maybe has the coaching staff worked up. Sorry, I was just getting a message right now. I think what you need to look at with this team, it got gutted defensively. It got gutted. Their whole pretty much like it's not now. It's not just the players they lost. It's the types of players they lost. A lot of veteran players that can back up the talk. Right when you're talking about walk the walk, talk the talk, that's what those players did. At the same time, it's not only just the players, it's also who makes the decisions. Management decided these players were going to be the priority in and these areas are going to suffer. Special teams, you know, you to a degree you go and you get some semblance of depth, right, of guys who can play special teams. But we knew that this was going to be a tough year for the Toronto Argonauts because of what they lost.
But did we know it was going to be tough as wide across the board?
I did not expect. I expected the team to be a 500 team and competing for top 3, not in the bottom of the division. Now wondering if they're even going to make the playoffs.
Well, David, my two doubts were what the offseason taught us. I thought was the defense would be in trouble, and I wasn't sure about the quarterback because Arbuckle never really had any success in the regular season, and I don't think it was fair to assume that because he had a great Cup where he did enough in the Grey Cup that was going to be something he could do in the regular season. There was stuff to be proved. So the irony for me here is the offense has been much better than I thought it would be. And it's amazing for me. The special teams is the one that disappoints me even more than the defense, David, because I didn't understand the players they lost or the players they had in special teams that don't meet the standard required to be a good special teams. The injury to their kick returner, that masked, I think, the problem, in my opinion. And now we're going to find out whether this special teams can start creating the kind of run back support that their kick returners need, which they haven't done. They haven't been able to stop the other guy, and they haven't been able to help their guy enough to make it impressive, which we sitting in the press box and sitting in front of our TVs or in the stands, the incredible plays that were made by kick returners in the Toronto Argonauts just aren't existing this year. It's not happening.
Yeah, no, there's just a lot that's not happening. And again, some of that is on coaching, some of that's on players, some of that's on management. It's just hard to say it's one thing, right? It's just kind of, unfortunately, it's just the way that some of these things go. At a time where, you know, you have a team right now in Toronto that was a how do I put it? They were targeted in a lot of ways. Now, not targeted in terms of they were it was planned, but
no, I think you're going down the road. They were targeted because when Hamilton takes players from Toronto like Amos that are important to Toronto, they're not only strengthening their lineup, they're weakening the Toronto one at the same time. That's what I know. That's what you're trying to say.
No, exactly right, and that to me is where, that's where things get a little dicey, right? you're expecting, a team to be able to withstand what's essentially, an ease, will withstand what, frankly, it's just tough to expect, right? It's tough to expect a team to have have their team gutted out like the way they has, and still be able to be competitive. It's tough. But you know what? That's also why, people make the money that they do.
Well, David, um, a hint to what happened to the Argos, David, and
Mhm.
the hint is the success that the Argos had based on plundering Calgary weakened Calgary. I think we're seeing the same thing now that Argos now are the victim of what they did to Calgary. They become the victim of that, where they've had a lot of their really good players gutted, taken off the team, and now it's caused the team to take steps back and be less successful. I don't think it's a coincidence. I think it's a simple fact, right? That's the common thread there. Now it's taken Calgary a couple of years to rebuild. Well, it's quite possible now that we're looking at not an Argo team that loses it, has a bad year, then wins a Grey Cup, has a bad year, and then wins a Grey Cup. There may not be a Grey Cup in the Argos' future in 2 or 3 years, and maybe not even a shot at winning a Grey Cup for 2 or 3 years, because they've been devastating, and building a team back up is not easy. You think when you look at Winnipeg, they've been the most successful team over the past 10, 11 years. They have dodged repeated bullets. Like right now, they're in a division where if I go back to the end of last year and go to now, there's 4 teams that could finish first in that division. At some point in the past year and a bit, BC is not a team you could have said, no, they'll never finish first. They could finish first. We know about Saskatchewan. We know about Winnipeg. And of course, we learned this year about Calgary. So, the competitive challenge that Winnipeg has, they have to be applauded for being where they are, David. That's what makes Winnipeg so special. And I know the Grey Cup happening there might be part of the reason why they're doing whatever they can. And they'll do what every other team that has a Grey Cup in their town. They're going to go over the cap at some point. You watch. They're going to spend a little extra money and pay for it next year.
Yeah, no, exactly. You I think when you look at teams this, like the West especially, it was looking like the West was going to be an absolute. I think the West is going to dominate in terms of standings this year. I just think East teams have taken a step back. We thought maybe the gap was going to change, where the East was going to take, a big step forward, and they were going to be the division to beat. But you look at the West right now, like BC should be a team that's 500 or better. Winnipeg is a team that's over 5. You have in the East, you only really have one team right now that I could say that looks like a team that can contend for a Grey Cup, and that's Hamilton, just because of where things are. Now that could change. That could, like, here's the thing: we're talking about this now on mid of August.
Yeah.
We know that there's a lot of seasons still left. We're at the halfway point of the season. There's still another half a season to go. So maybe it's a little early to say that. Maybe. But
if you don't believe the die is set, right? If you don't believe the die is set and past is prologue for the future. The Argos need to clean things up. Ottawa looked like they got over the hump with the game against Toronto, and then even during the game last night, they looked like they'd gotten over the hump. But then again, they figured out a way to lose, and that's something that both these teams last year met in the playoffs, right? And now they both could not make the playoffs, because right now, if the season ended today, BC would be taking the third playoff spot in the East.
Yeah, no, I mean that, and that's something where I like the crossover. I don't think a team should be rewarded. I don't think a team should be punished because of the way that only 3 teams from the division. I do like the crossover for this reason. I don't think if a team is not good enough to make the playoffs, they shouldn't make the playoffs. Like, you don't reward mediocrity in a way, right? So I do agree with that.
And
but
you don't
that
teams that are playing better than a handful of other teams.
Yeah. Now BC's got a handful of games right now coming up against East opponents.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see that if they're going to get that crossover, they're going to have to earn it.
They go on a run, they will get the crossover. If they go on a run in the East, they will get the crossover, because right now they're already they're the masters of their own destiny right now, and they're only a game behind Winnipeg, so and 2 games behind Calgary. So this thing that we're talking about isn't just about BC getting the crossover. There are better teams in the West that if BC plays really well, that'll get the crossover. In other words, there are too many options for the East to lose that 3rd playoff spot. There's just too many options. To your point, how good the West is in regards to comparing it to the Eastern Conference.
Yeah.
Or division, sorry.
Right. And so I just think that there is I think when you look at the East, I think it's still early to say for sure where it's going to go. I think it could completely change. The crossover, it's funny. Let's say Toronto bumps out Montreal, or let's say Ottawa bumps out Montreal, and they have the record's not so great. Let's say it's like under 500. Even if BC's over 500 and makes the crossover, they'd be the 3rd seed. They would have to play the road game instead of being the home team. Like, I think some people need to understand that, yes, while the crossover does benefit in terms of having that competitive balance,
they've never won. The crossover team has never won.
The crossover team's never won a Grey Cup. They have made to the East Final. I don't think they've ever made it to the Grey Cup. I don't think we've ever had a West versus West crossover. Again, I have to look back. I don't think
come is in 2012 when Edmonton, if not for Mike Riley's injury, could have ended up in the Grey Cup, beating Toronto.
Yeah,
and they were winning until their quarterback got injured. So
those are just things you kind of have to.
And it's a double road game. It's not just a road game. It's a road game across the country.
Exactly. It's not easy.
Especially if you're BC.
Oh, yeah. Especially BC. I agree with that.
All right. Well, in conclusion, David, what is the biggest thing that we haven't talked about today? What have we missed? You missed anything?
It's just tonight's match. Well, not tonight. Sorry, the match between Hamilton and Saskatchewan. One quarterback might show who's really the MOP front runner, because that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, last week it was Calgary and Winnipeg. This week it's Hamilton. Yeah, Hamilton and Saskatchewan, to see who's going to finish first and who's going to. Right now, the teams that are top pick for the Grey Cup, we've got Saskatchewan in there for sure. Hamilton's close, and a victory tonight would make that. The favorite would be bipolar.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
No, I agree with that.
All right. Listen, David, thanks for doing this.
Thank you, Frank.
Have a great day and enjoy the football this week. And for those of you that have watched, thank you for watching. If you'd like to watch the episode and you just joined us, you can check it out on YouTube, Candid Frank Stanisha 1030 on YouTube. Thanks for watching, everybody. He's David Morisuti, Sportsnet. I'm Candid Frank Live. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you next time.